allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you should choose, we'll start with a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, please guide our decision-making, help us to make wise decisions, and to have good judgment to lead the city of Canby. Amen. Okay. First item of business is citizen input on non-agended items. Is there anyone that would like to bring anything before the Planning Commission that was not on the agenda? None. Okay. Minutes of the October 13th, 2014 meeting.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the minutes of the October 13th meeting.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that or second?
I would second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the October 13th, 2014 minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I was not here, so I abstained, and it passes. Okay. Our next item of business is a public hearing. We will be considering a minor land partition request from Ed Netter to partition one existing lot located at 672 South First Street into 3 lots. Permit MLP 14-03. The matter that's presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on the matter, please be prepared to step forward to the microphone at the appropriate time. State your mailing address, your name, and your interest in the matter. Please be sure to sign the testimony sheet or fill out a testimony card and submit it to the chair or to staff. For those other than the applicants that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please sign on the sheet that's in the back of the room or speak up when we call for any testimony. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. You may be limited by time for your presentation. Generally, the applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be given 5 minutes each. The opponents will be given 5 minutes each, and those thought to be neutral on the matter will be given 5 minutes each. The applicant will then have 10 minutes for rebuttal. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access and to become part of the record. All written testimony received both for and against prior to the hearing shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable review criteria contained as indicated in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the applicable land use regulations which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it's only to concur with previous testimony. So at this time, I'll ask all the members of the hearing body, the commissioners, if they have any conflict of interest. If they do have a conflict of interest, please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate or abstain from hearing the present matter. Are there any conflicts? No. No conflicts, no conflicts. Is there any ex parte contacts? Is there any member of the Planning Commission that has had an ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site? If so, please declare the nature and extent of such contact at this time. None. I have none. Does any member of the audience have any questions about any of the Planning Commission's conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts? None? Okay. So the public hearing on this will be conducted as follows. First, we'll have the staff report. Next, we will have questions of the Planning Commission to staff. Then we will open it up for public hearing. For testimony. The applicant will have not more than 15 minutes. Then other proponents will have not more than 5 minutes each. Opponents will then have 5 minutes each. Any neutral parties will have not more than 5 minutes each. And the applicant will have not more than 10 minutes in rebuttal. Then we'll close public testimony. We'll ask any further questions that the Planning Commission may have, and we will discuss and deliberate, which may include talking with staff. Then we will render a decision, which may or may not include signing of findings tonight. Are there any questions on the procedure for the hearing? Okay. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chair. We have a drawing that I'm presenting up here in the PowerPoint to help you visualize the request for a minor partition. Can I borrow your pointer? This pointer I'm using isn't working. We have the parcel fronting on South First Street, and there is another lot that is not a part of this application that has a little arm that sweeps down along 6th Place that's over here that has allowed consideration of a means of access to this third parcel from this direction that isn't actually a part of the partition. And that would be accomplished through an access and utility easement that's 20 feet wide, crossing that little sliver of property that sweeps down on that particular lot. So that makes this a little bit different than a typical kind of flag lot arrangement that we usually see. The parcel 2 is what we'd call a typical flag lot, except in this particular case, rather than an arm of the lot going down to front on the public street, we have an access easement and utility easement that's 20 foot wide coming up to provide access to this middle tract, or parcel 2. And so that's an alternative way that the code allows us to do that, rather than actually having the dedicated frontage on the public street. The other thing that makes it a little different than most flag lots is that usually the existing development that may be saved is on the lot that fronts out here on the public street. In this case, the existing house is way back in the middle of that existing tract, and they are proposing to save that home. And then its old associated garage is up here on proposed parcel 3, and that's proposed to be removed. So we end up with a existing house in the middle of this tract, and trying to build and plat the lots around that existing house in a manner that maintains the proper setbacks and creates the proper lot sizes. And in this particular case, they did revise this drawing at my request so that we could make this frontage lot larger, and that was because of the way that we would calculate building setbacks, with the front along First Street as being the front setback, which is the greatest with 20 foot. And I think the applicants were originally thinking that the front setback would be from this access easement, and so they had a narrower lot originally planned there. But they feel comfortable that this lot size at 8,027 square feet is what it looks like is large enough now to adequately have a decent size building footprint and meet the resulting setbacks when they come in for a building permit. Just for your information, when you make a flag lot, so the setbacks on this interior lot involve 3 side yards, which are 7-foot setbacks, and then their choice of a rear yard, which undoubtedly will probably be along this 20-foot wide access easement here. And so they can easily meet the setbacks on that particular lot. We mentioned in the staff report that the improvements along First Street are adequate, even though the existing sidewalk is not a 6-foot wide sidewalk, which is today's standard. If you were to visit the site and look at it, you would see that the existing sidewalk is in really good shape, and it hugs the curb, and widening to a 6-foot sidewalk would would, in my opinion, and apparently a city engineer's opinion, make this particular redevelopment, so to speak, of this lot look kind of out of place for the rest of the block, because on both sides there are existing 4-foot wide sidewalks. And then you would taper a 6-foot sidewalk down to the existing 4 foots on either side. So you wouldn't end up having a 6-foot wide sidewalk for very long on this particular tract if you were to require that. But that's up to you to make that decision, which way you think we should go on that. Trying to think. The other thing that you encounter when you're saving an existing home, and it's not necessarily a problem with this application, but they did not provide us detailed information, and they can do that later, prior to the partition plat that will get filed of record, of where the existing utility laterals are to this house, because it has service, and now you're going to draw property lines, and so there's a good chance that some of those services are going to have to be relocated. And I'm suggesting that that's probably what they will do, because one or more of those services may be going right through the footprint of the proposed house on the front here, if they don't relocate them. And it would also make sense that they relocate them, since they're designating a 20-foot utility and access easement along this northern boundary. So I'm anticipating, with a condition of approval to provide a utility plan prior to platting, that they will have those services in agreement with the utility agencies and departments that are in charge before that plat gets filed of record. The access easements that are coming from both directions will need that document to be filed of record prior to the plat, especially this one up here that isn't part of this subdivision or partition. They need to have that, and it is made a condition of approval to have that executed and recorded prior to us allowing this partition to record, since that's their only means of access to parcel 3 that's being proposed. Another thing that, kind of a minor detail, but in this arrangement, there will be one lot that is being created for a new house that fronts on the public street. And our normal requirements require street tree planting along public streets. And so we made a condition of approval that would require a 12-foot street tree easement to be platted with the partition plat along that frontage of parcel 1, and that they would pay the street fee. And in this case, I think it's probably equal to 2 or 3 possible trees for the frontage that's there. That would be something that we would collect from the developer prior to recording the plat as well, so that it's not left up to a potential buyer or home builder of that lot. It's really a developer's responsibility to take care of that requirement. Other than that, that's the main conditions and things that we had in this. I did have one slide I might go down to just to see. I think I covered all of those items. One item I did forget. We proposed, as a result of public input from some property owner to the north, go back to the drawing maybe, that there are some existing cedar trees, mostly on parcel 3, but partially on parcel 2, I believe, as well, along the northern boundary, and they indicate that they're right on the property line. I have not actually, although I went out to First Street, I had not been on the other end to see exactly where those trees might be. The drawings don't identify the location of those trees, But the thought process is if they were to do a tree protection plan, and the trees are indeed right along the property boundary and within a couple feet of that property boundary, then hopefully a few of those can be retained and continue to serve as a buffer between those existing homes and the intensification that's happening right adjacent to them. So that's a suggestion that the applicant would agree to do that in this particular case to help that buffering from the existing neighbors. With that, I guess we did recommend approval of this particular partition, subject to the conditions of approval listed in the staff report.
Any questions for Mr. Brown?
Yeah, this one, on the cedar trees, because I did read that. And also, we don't know for sure which side of the property line, or are they right?
No, I do not know that, and that's why I was proposing maybe that the applicant look into that a little more closely to see if any of them are actually on his side of the fence, since he's going to be proposing a new driveway along that northern boundary to serve the house, depending on exactly where he puts that driveway, he could save the trees.
Any other questions? So we'll move to the applicant. Would the applicant like to make a statement? Nope. Okay. Any opponents? Is there any opponents that would like to speak?
What if I have questions?
You don't get to ask questions during a public hearing. You get to make statements and try and persuade us to your way of thinking if you have a way of thinking.
Well, I just have some concerns.
Then come on up and, well, you can wait till the neutral. If you're not sure whether you're an opponent or a proponent, then do it during the neutral. And maybe the applicant will want to speak to your questions during their rebuttal. Okay, are there any other proponents, people that would like to speak in favor of it? Are there any opponents that would like to speak against it? Are there any neutral parties that would like to say something?
Well, there's...
Come on up to the, please state your name and come up to the microphone so we get you on TV. You're famous.
Hi, my name's Ray Ruggles. I own the half acre that's actually south of that property.
Okay, what was your address, sir?
680 South Fir.
Great, perfect. Go ahead, tell us what you want
I
to
own
tell
that
us.
whole piece on the bottom.
Okay,
There are two great big huge trees right behind the house in the center. I mean,
Okay.
we're talking humongous
you
trees.
say behind you, talking right in this area there?
No, on his side.
Oh, on his side, back here?
Actually,
When you say behind, which way are you talking about?
they're right here.
Okay,
I'm because I'm wondering whether or not those are going to be removed or what's going to happen.
okay,
That's part of the, because we're not talking small trees, we're talking huge. And if they're gonna be digging all the ground up and stuff around them, then you're gonna have the potential for one of them falling over, especially with the winds we've had.
sure. Okay, is that, we don't have answers for you, sorry.
I know, and then the other question is my whole side of that one section is all fenced except for one part right up close to the street. I'd like to find out if they're gonna put a fence in there, because I don't really care to have somebody else's backyard in mine. I have enough problems with the people that are now there having their dogs and stuff coming in my yard. I'd like to request that they put a fence up to finish off. It's not that much, but I think it's appropriate.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you for your time. Does the applicant care to have a rebuttal, make any comments, address any of those concerns?
Hello, Ed Netter, live at 1847 South Fir Street. I think the two big trees he was talking about, we'll have to see where they fall. There's two that,
Do you mean literally fall, or what happened?
aren't they about right there? the two,
Pretty close, they're
yeah. So they're there, we'll see how they fit in to the floor plan of the house. As the fence goes, yes, we would fence it up here, but how far can we take it to the street, Ryan?
Yeah, within 20 feet, you can build a fence, but it has to be no taller than 3.5 feet.
Right. Do you understand? So yeah, if you're in the backyard of this house, we would continue the 6-foot fence as far as we can, and then probably drop it down to that 3.5 feet.
Anything else with your rebuttal time?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for staff? Does the planning commission have any other questions?
I do have one. Condition 5 of the conditions says that you will submit a protection plan for the trees along the north boundary. Is that something that you're all right with? Those cedar trees on the right, on the far side. Are you all right with that as a condition?
Trying to protect them,
Yeah, as to submit a protection plan for that.
and Brian,
Do
maybe now.
do you know where those trees exist that the
They're
neighbors?
on lot 2, but I don't think there's one on lot 3, the cedar trees.
I think what Mr. Hensley was saying, there's a condition that says, literally, the applicant shall submit a tree protection plan to indicate which trees can be preserved along the northern boundary of the existing tax lot if agreed upon at the public hearing. So we need to do that today because it's a public hearing.
And Brian,
That's
did
what
you
I'm
add
saying.
that?
Yes, I mean, those are in the staff report that was sent to you. I mean, that was a condition as a direct response to a neighbor's concern.
Is that something that you would agree to do or not? And we make a decision on whether that condition will be required or not.
Yes, we can try to protect them, but the first couple, something may happen with the underground utilities. If we take too many roots, then it makes them unstable. But yeah, but tree protection plan.
Does that answer your
Yes.
question?
You know, I might say, it was written with the intent that if they are located within reasonable distance of the property boundary, they could probably work around them. If they're way over into the middle of their 20-foot access and utility easement, they're probably going to be in the way. Not the two big trees, but the trees along the property boundary, since we didn't have them located on the drawing.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, or public testimony part of the public hearing, and we'll move to deliberation. Is there any discussion about any of the conditions or the criteria or the motions?
Can we revisit the sidewalk for just a second? My thinking is that it should stay at the 4-foot width just for consistency rather than go from 6 to 4 and back to 6. That was, you wanted input on that? That's my input.
I believe that conforms to what staff's proposed findings were, correct? Any other items to discuss or amend or anything?
Well, I don't have a warm fuzzy about the tree situation. It all kind of seems to be
Yeah, it's
kind of floating. But
It is.
I don't know what we can do about it, but
You know, if you're really, really concerned and you really want to be responsive to the neighbor's concern, she didn't say whether they were on her property or on the other. She said they were on the fence line, and that's what's in her letter that's included. I looked at an aerial, and it looked like they were about on the fence line. There was one, looked like there was one tree up towards parcel 3. The others looked like they were directly north of the existing house. And I don't know whether there's any new driveway or something going to be constructed into that near the existing house, the end of it there or not. But without having the trees located, it's really difficult to tie that condition down. And so my intent was to basically get the applicant to volunteer to look into the reasonableness of preserving those trees, because we actually don't have an ordinance criteria that says you have to preserve them. It's the right thing to do if you can, especially if they're right on the property boundary.
We're talking about the cedar trees, right?
Yes.
Or the two big trees?
Yeah, the cedar trees.
Lots of trees.
And Mr. Shirley, just to address your thought, maybe some food for thought on that, I mean, I can definitely feel for the gentleman that is concerned that they might be harmed or taken out or fall down in the wind, because I have the same thing. I have a couple of ginormous cedar trees on the south side of town. Every time there's a windstorm, I'm afraid that they're going to fall on my house. But I also don't think that, so I have great empathy for them, but I also don't think it's any of the authority that we're given in the code for this type of partition to, require trees that are not on the boundary line or something like that to be removed. I like what Brian did actually with sort of a tree protection plan to see if it's feasible, so that there's sort of a knowledge out there, there's information. If this tree protection plan comes back and it says, these are just going to be unsafe, then we've got some information out there. So that's my thoughts.
Well, I just went through a situation with the utility folks this summer on my land, running power out to my shop, and they were really good to work with because his original proposal was going on the south side of this large fir tree I have, and it would have endangered the roots, as we're kind of thinking in this situation. And I went back to him and put an alternate plan in, and they came out, looked, and they accepted it. So I think they're really good to work with. So we can probably, you do have a 20-foot latitude, it sounds like, to play with, to run the utilities so that it keep away from the roots and not endanger the trees. The ones on the north side, that is, not the big ones on the south. That's another issue. But
Ma'am, I do see you raising your hand back there, but we've closed the public input part of the public hearing, so I'm sorry. Okay, if anybody has any motions on this application?
I'd like to move that we approve the minor partition for MLP 14-03.
Second motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion to approve?
this would be keeping the sidewalk at the 4 foot. Okay.
To adopt staff's findings. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. There were 5 ayes, I heard. Okay. We have a final decision to approve.
Yes, we do. If you wanted to move to that, you need to come back to, I don't even have the updated.
Oh, am I looking at the old agenda?
You must be looking, I'm looking at the old agenda too. Let's see, where is it here?
I had one emailed to me, I know, but I didn't reprint out one that got emailed to me. Okay. That's right, Mr. Brown, we'll go next. We have more new business, the consideration of a modification request from Jason Bristol to replace the pavers with asphalt for his previously approved Emerald Gardens subdivision project MOD 14-04. Okay, Brian, did you assess this? Is this a public hearing?
No, it's not a public hearing. It's, there's provisions in our code that just indicate we place things on your agenda under new business when various things like modifications of previously approved developments that you've reviewed We try to come back when it's something that we think you might have some interest in. In this particular case, I always like to develop some little memorandum that gives you a little bit more information, but the applicant did a pretty good job in his letter, and about the only thing that I need to maybe add is that, I didn't write down the section. There is a section of the code that allows the Planning Commission to grant exceptions when you're dealing with planned unit developments. One of the arguments for using a planned unit development instead of standard subdivisions and such is to encourage creativity, something that's a little different. This happens to be that 15-lot, 3-story townhome development that's also a subdivision. And one of the things they did with this was private streets and very small lots and setbacks and such that don't meet the normal standard. And so one of the things that he's asking an exception to, that they made effort, why they brought it before you to begin with, was that each individual platted lot, there's 15 of them, they were trying to meet the 70% maximum impervious surface requirement. And they managed to do that partially by using the permeable pavers in the private street between the garages. And I think his letter indicates that overall, they're just a tiny bit under for the site as a whole. If they do away with those permeable pavers, they're still at 69.2%, which actually meets the requirement for the site as a whole. And so I think it's reasonable, and it's my interpretation, that we can give that kind of interpretation, that they're meeting it for the PUD as a whole, the 70%, no more than 70%, and that they don't need to meet it for the individual platted lots themselves because of the uniqueness of why we do PUDs. So with that information, I'll just let you read his letter, I guess.
Has anything been submitted to you that mathematically sort of shows that measurement or demonstrates that measurement is actually the 69.2?
No, I'm taking their word for that particularness. It was calculated by Sissel Engineering, I believe, and I don't have any problem whatsoever in believing what he does.
My thoughts would be that we have them show something to demonstrate that math, and then we approve it if they show that math. It's, you know, whether if it meets our code requirements, I'm not sure I care so much which exact thing's on the ground. Which thoughts on that?
I agree.
Okay. All in favor of authorizing Mr. Brown to approve that modification?
Subject to
some verification of the measurements, staying underneath the code. Okay. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Of any opposed? None? Okay. Thank you. Now we go to approval of final decision, MLP 14-03. This was today's, wasn't it? I didn't see any draft minutes, or draft findings in my packet. Do we have those? So
They did go out.
Packet that was laying there should have.
does this one have them instead of this one I got?
Right on the end.
No, the formal ones? Oh, yeah, okay, here we go, great. We did not modify anything, so,
We lifted the conditions completely from the staff report.
yeah. So unless there's any objection, I will just sign as is, since we just authorized this. Do you want to give me that fancy copy, or?
Yep.
That's a really nice paper. Sure you want to mark it up with...
Yeah, with signature.
Yeah.
You can mark it up.
I saw that.
I can throw that thing on garbage.
Yeah.
My little re-up thing.
No, no. Happy with having you do that.
Okey dokey. Thank you, Brent.
Great.
Other items of interest in the regular staff report?
Well, I wanted you to know that we did hire an associate planner who started on November 12th. He thought about coming to tonight's meeting, but he is just a half-time employee, and so if he stuck around till 7 o'clock, then he'd be gone 3 hours tomorrow. So he will be at your next meeting on December 8th because he's working on the Canby Square new pad development application, site and design review. And so he'll be here to present that, and you'll get to meet him. His name's Dave Epling, and he was a senior planner for Marion County for past 20 years and actually retired and said, I want to come back to work. So we're happy to have him. And then I just indicated we do have a meeting scheduled for December 8th for that. It's about a 5,000 some square foot building that's replacing the old Hoi Tin restaurant. So if you know where that is,
Oh.
yeah.
No problem.
Really bad Chinese food.
So, yeah, there's been many other improvements made to that shopping center with a new parking lot surfacing and new facade on one of the buildings that are back in there, and then the new Big Five Sports is about to open. I don't think they've,
Did open.
yeah, they
Did
did
open,
open.
yeah.
That's right, they had a temporary occupancy.
3 times?
That's right. That's about all I have.
Okay. Any planning commissioners have any items of interest, agendas, things to discuss?
Questions. Have we heard anything more on the Fred Meyer's gas station?
Yeah, I'm not sure what your last update was, but
We were
I'm trying to
waiting.
think if it's been about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the Court of Appeals acted on it, and according to our city attorney who was there, he said they upheld the Luba decision, which upheld the city council's approval of Fred Meyer, and all we're waiting for now is for them to put it in writing, and we don't know what format they're going to use, whether it's going to be a short, quick decision that could come any day, or whether it might be another couple of months because they're going to make a big deal out of whatever they write up.
So we've won at every level on that thing, huh?
Yeah, and there was a lot to that particular thing. Poor Laney pulled her hair out, putting the packets.
Was the key
Further
issue in
bigger.
that whether the traffic study was...
That was one of
how that-
4.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Oh.
that was probably the biggest, and apparently we prevailed on that item. And I get pretty confused on some of the others were a definition of what's a building and what's a structure because of the arbor that they were doing around the edge. I can't even remember
The
what
way it
the
said the
others.
square footage of the structure was the actual face of it, not the empty air.
Yeah. Trying to remember what the other 2 items were. I can't remember now. I tried to forget everything about that. It's just mind-numbing.
And my second question is, has there been anything new in regards to the McDonald's property that we had acted on here a number of months ago?
Yeah. Just last week, I sent an email back, but it probably went to because it was on another matter dealing with the McDonald's. They wanted to make sure that they were paid in full to whatever activity they had done because their fiscal year was coming to an end. And I happened to mention to them, yes, you are, and we haven't heard anything from anyone for nearly 6 months since it was approved. I did hear through the grapevine that the manager of the current facility had requested some sort of modification. And even when it was in front of you, she was requesting the playground be retained. And so the design that you were looking at the public hearing that we had pictures of actually didn't show the playground, but you approved the playground. So I heard there was something else she was asking for as well. But I also know that they've been working on one in Oregon City, and they said they can't work on two at the same time in this immediate area, but I think that one's done now. They were also trying to time it very, very closely to when school was out. Now school's in, so I don't know if that has any bearing on why they're not moving forward right now or not.
As I recall, the biggest issue seemed to be the access to the Fisher Pump.
Yeah, that adjacent
A little bit,
property.
modifying that
Yeah.
so the trucks could get in and out.
And there was a condition on how they were supposed to deal with that, and
I think it was gonna go to
But,
ODOT or something
yeah.
to try to work it out. and-
There's something else that we don't know about, and they haven't shared it with us. So I don't know why they haven't moved forward.
Okay.
But they're still in communication. They were asking us if they were paid up on all their bills.
Anything else? Anybody? Okay. And there's no other business, then we will adjourn.